It is hard to say whether a nation is following principles of democracy or not. Many researchers have been studying countries based on different parameters. The PEW Research Center studied 167 nations between 1946 and 2017. It examined openness of political participation and the constraints on the chief executive while evaluating whether a country was democratic, autocratic, or had mixed features. It found that the percentage of democratic nations increased from 29 to 57. The percentage of democracies had doubled between 1946 and 2017 as per this study. Does that mean all nations must adopt this form of government? Also, why should we follow a democratic system of governance ourselves? We should not accept something just because it is popular. Look at our own country. Even though a democracy takes into account the people's wishes, problems like poverty persist. Many also complain that democracy is full of chaos, instability, hypocrisy, and corruption. So, what should we do? Should we invite the British or kings to rule our country? Of course not. How about a powerful leader who doesn't have to worry about elections? That sounds like a dictatorship. A sincere and strong leader. But how can you be sure that the leader might later not turn rogue and cause harm to people who elected him or her? Let's understand one thing. Democracy has disadvantages, just like any other form of government. We can't say poverty and corruption exist only in democracies. They exist under all types of governments. We need to examine the merits and demerits of democracy before drawing conclusions. Let's first understand the demerits. Democratic governments delay decision-making. For example, India took 17 years to implement a uniform tax system throughout the country. No citizen or political party can be kept out of the decision-making process. Probably, this could have been done in 3 years if India had a dictatorship. Secondly, leaders keep changing in a democracy. Okay, so how is that a problem? New leaders emerge in almost every election. This could lead to major changes in the way a government functions. Hence, instability. The set of goals keep changing, and sometimes nothing seems to be progressing quickly enough. Third, democracy is about political competition and power play. Why do we say that? Competition is a part of the democratic process. We can't have a good democracy if political parties don't compete with each other during elections. Elections decide the rulers in a democracy. It is essentially a numbers game. In such a scenario, people might indulge in illegal strategies. For example, people are sometimes paid to vote for a particular party in an election. Elected representatives have been known to switch parties in exchange for money or power in India. Political competition and power play affects democracy adversely. Since elections are an integral part of democracy, politicians compete for votes. They often need to impress voters to win elections. This can lead to corruption. The voters can be offered incentives in exchange for support. Elected leaders can indulge in corruption to accumulate resources for future elections after getting elected. These possibilities can lead one to think that there is no scope for morality in democratic politics. What are some other demerits of democracies? Leaders often don't know the best interests of people. Should they provide free televisions to people or spend more on education? Education would help people, but that would not fetch immediate results in elections. People won't be able to see the results of a politician's actions immediately. On the other hand, televisions are tangible. You can touch and feel the benefits derived from a politician's actions, though it might be less useful in the long run. So, politicians choose to spend on free televisions for voters. Many argue that ordinary people don't know what's good for a country. They should not be allowed to take decisions related to important matters related to the country according to them. This is a debatable matter. Everyone can have different opinions, but we can't deny the existence of demerits in a democracy. Most of these concerns are genuine. There are significant problems. You might feel that democracy is not the ideal form of government after listening to these points. Is there a better option? I don't know. We need to see if democracy is better than other forms of government. Let's check.
There are too many protests. I am declaring an emergency. Why? We are a democracy. Protests are normal. Shut up. There is an internal disturbance. I will fire you if you don't comply. Sir, we will have to shut down independent media and arrest citizens who disagree with you. That is my intention.
Imagine there's a famine. The people would be eager to highlight their struggles. The government would like to argue that the situation is fine. They would prefer to hide their mistakes. But it's hard to do in a democracy. China does not have a democratic government. Between 1958 and 1961, there was a severe famine in the country. Approximately 3 crore people died of hunger. India's economic condition was not better than that of China, but India did not face such a severe famine. Economists think that the type of government had a major impact on the severity of famines. But what does democracy have to do with famines? Democracies offer the freedom to protest peacefully and highlight problems of the people. This is a big advantage. When people lose this freedom, horrible things can happen. Governments become more insensitive when they don't recognize the voice of their citizens. In many cases, all people may not be able to voice out their concerns. In such cases, how can people's opinion be aired in a country? Through political parties. Democracies have many parties functioning in the political sphere. This is generally called a multi-party system. Parties that are not in power actively criticize the ruling party. They are known as the opposition parties. The free press can also point out shortcomings of the government and highlight it. In a democracy, the ruling party must listen to the criticism of the opposition parties and free press. It has to address genuine concerns. This establishes an accountable government. How? Criticism from the opposition parties give the ruling party an opportunity to correct its mistakes. Thus, democracy is an accountable form of government. Democracy requires rulers to listen to the people, attend to their needs, and respond accordingly. This is one of the biggest advantages of democratic rule. If China had a democratic government with a multi-party political system, it might have prevented a famine, or it might have reduced the number of deaths caused by the famine.
We are going to build an airport in this city.
It should be in the outskirts of the city.
Why? Do you own land there? Planning to make money by selling it to the government? It should be close to my residence.
It should be close to the Chief Minister's residence. There are many homes near his residence. People might protest.
Media will create a big ruckus. They could also approach courts.
Folks, my suggestion was based on best practices around the world.
That makes sense to me. Let's take his suggestion.
Democracy improves the quality of decision-making. How? Well, you see, democracy creates space for discussions and opinions. People can express their opinions on important decisions and point out the mistakes they find in them. Thus, the rulers can weigh in all options and opinions. Subsequently, the quality of the decisions made by the government becomes enhanced. Of course, there can be delays due to discussions and deliberations. Even though it takes more time to make a decision, the chances of making irresponsible and rash decisions is lesser in a democracy. All right, decision-making improves in a democracy. Can democracy handle diversity seen in a society? Decision-making would supposedly become harder when different religions, languages, and communities live together. Why? That's because a decision made by the government might favor one group or the other. For example, many people's homes could be demolished if an airport is built in the center of the city near the chief minister's house. But it would benefit people who want to reach the airport quickly. One group of people are facing severe hardship, while the other is getting a small benefit. Isn't it a good idea to prevent severe hardship to anyone in a democracy? Yes. So it was a good idea to build an airport outside the city. What would happen if the politicians had taken the wrong decision to build an airport inside the city? People living inside the city would have protested against the move. They would have approached the courts. All of this would have forced the government to change its decision. Thus, democracy provides a method to deal with differences and conflicts peacefully.
Sir, we have faced discrimination and oppression. Even though there are laws framed against it, we are still suffering.
How can I help you?
We are unable to meet our basic needs because of our poor social and economic status. My community needs jobs and education to overcome these issues.
We'll reserve some positions in government jobs and educational institutions for people like you.
Sir, my community will miss out on those opportunities. Why don't you keep it open for all? This is against equality.
We live in a democracy. We need to provide dignity to all citizens. Those who missed out on opportunities in the past should get some help.
How are you going to take care of us?
The government will provide adequate opportunities for your community as well.
India is a country filled with diverse people. Different languages, religions, and castes are part of the country. And very often, they have different interests. Each social group sees the world in a different way. Sometimes the views and interests of different communities can clash. Can we resolve this without damaging the dignity of any social group? This is a tough challenge. Sometimes the dominant group tramples over the views of the smaller community. Sometimes a more powerful group ensures that its interests are protected. Such an approach could often lead to resentment and unhappiness. For example, the provision of reservations could cause resentment among groups that don't get the benefit. They would not be happy with others getting the benefit. See, different social groups can't live together if they resent each other. In such cases, democracy provides a way to find peaceful solutions. There can't be a permanent winner or a permanent loser in democracies having diverse communities. Democracy enhances the dignity of all citizens. This form of government respects each and every individual, irrespective of their social and economic status. It also enables them to respect themselves. And that is a beautiful thing about democracy.
Sir, people are protesting. About what? Against your corrupt minister. I can't do much. He is very influential in this state. Sir, people are not giving up. They are still protesting. I can't ignore them anymore. Call the minister. I'll ask him to resign and launch an investigation.
All leaders and representatives in a democracy are good. A lot of mistakes can happen. In this case, the chief minister did not act against a corrupt minister because he was powerful. But the protesters have the freedom to continue their protests. They created awareness about the mistake done by their leader. Eventually, the chief minister budged to the demands of the protesters and responded to it. Under a dictatorship, the protesters would have been imprisoned. They could also be shot down. Public opinion and mistakes would not matter under a non-democratic form of government. This is another major advantage of a democratic government. What is the major takeaway from all these discussions? Well, democracy has many demerits, but it provides the best system for correcting errors and arriving at good decisions. It is more likely to respect the views of all citizens, and it facilitates coexistence of different kinds of people. That impressed me. That is why I feel that democracy is the best form of government. What about you? Do you feel the same?